Now that we're comfortable working with sound, we're going to change tack slightly to prepare for the last app that we're going to make in this section, which is going to be a basic phrases app. So essentially the app is going to have 8 buttons, 2 along and 4 down, which we want to stretch to the whole width of the screen, and then you're going to be able to tap those buttons to say basic phrases. So it's one of those apps you might take with you on holiday, or even use to learn some basic phrases in a new language. So the challenge there then is the setup. We want to make sure that our buttons cover the whole screen, whatever the screen size, in a kind of grid. And indeed there is a layout in Android particularly or specifically designed for this. And that's what we're going to investigate in this video. So it's called Grid Layout. So I'll call my new app Grid Layout Demo. And we'll go for, as usual, the default options. So there are a few subtleties to the Grid Layout Demo, and it's always good to see a new way of laying out your user interface elements. So here we go. I'm going to start by removing the default text view there. And then, no surprise, I'm going to add a grid layout. So I'm just going to drag that in and we'll align it to the top left, and you can see by default it takes the whole width and the height of the parent. So we could change that here if that's what we wanted, but actually that's exactly what we want. We want the grid layout to stretch to the edges of the screen, minus the menu bar at the top, of course. So while we're spending a bit more time looking at layout, it's always good to compare what we've just added to the text XML version of that, as we've seen before. So this is our grid layout code that has just been added to our app by dragging that in. So it's very simple. We just use grid layout to define a grid layout, and then we've set the width and height to match the parent, and then align to the top and the start. We could actually do without those lines because they will happen by default anyway if we match the parent. There we go. So let's add a button to this grid layout and see how it does, or see how it behaves. So I'm just going to drag it in like that into our grid layout. And you can see this time we start getting these boxes appearing. So this tells us where this item is in terms of the grid. So if I add another one, you can see this button is the second one along, but still in the first row there, whereas this one is in the first row and the first column as well. So what we want is to have as many buttons as we like. In this case, it's going to be 8, but we want them to stretch to the whole width of the screen and the height of the screen as well. So the easiest way to do that is to go to the XML. And for each of our buttons, we're going to specify a few different things. So first of all, we're going to specify where they are in the grid layout. So this first one's going to be the top left. So this is going to be layout column. There it is. It's going to be 0. And the next one, you won't be surprised to hear, is going to be layout row. There we go, and that's 0 as well. So that hasn't changed anything. It's just specified which button this is. And the next thing we're going to specify is the gravity. We talked about gravity before, but this time we want to use it to fill. And this will fill both horizontally and vertically the space that it's in. So you can see what it's done there. It's filled the whole screen vertically, and it's filled it horizontally up to the width of that new button there, which is the behavior that we want. We'll obviously need to update the new button code to make that work. There's a couple of extras I'm going to add that's worth bearing in mind, and that is the column weight. And we want all of our column weights to be equal because we want them all to be the same size. So I'm going to set them all to be 1. Just to point out there's a column span. So if you wanted one of your buttons to span 2 columns, for example, then you could use your grid layout to do that. But we're not going to do that here. We're just going to set the row weight to be 1 as well. Just to show you what you can do, there's a little image there. So you can see that part is twice as wide as the ones below, and you would do that using spans. Okay, so now I've got my button behaving as I want it to. I'm actually going to just copy and paste that code. So I've got rid of the second button. That's going to give me a problem with IDs, so I'll just update the IDs temporarily, and we've got this one's going to be column 1 and row 0. So now we've got 2 buttons together which side by side take up the whole screen. So the third one, I want to have a column of 0 and a row of 1. There we go. Now this is working. I'm actually going to ignore that ID problem for a moment because I don't need to worry about it. We're going to add the IDs later on. But now I'm just going to update that so it's column 1 and row 1. There we go. So that's how you would get 4 buttons. Or these don't have to be buttons, they could be images, could be anything you like. But that's how you would get 4 equally spaced boxes. So now I'm just going to add 4 more. And then update them all. So there we go. So this one's going to have a row of 2 and a column of 1. This one's going to have a row. Sorry, this one's 2 and 1. This one's 2 and 0. Then we've got 3 and 0. And 3 and 1. There we go. So now we've got our 8 buttons. Don't worry about the ID problem, we'll solve those later. But they fill the screen very nicely, and they will do that regardless of the screen size of the device that's being used. So that's a really useful layout if you want your interface elements to stretch to the edge of the screen. I'm not going to go through this with you, but a quick challenge might be to try and recreate that grid layout there. So you've got a grid with a span of 2 across the top and then 1 with a row span of 2 down the middle there, and the other ones are all spans of 1. So give that a go if you want to practice your layouts, but I'm going to stop the video here and we will then go on to create our basic phrases app.